Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. On the show today, master breathworker Dan Brule. So Dan has been doing this since before I was born. So since 1970, personally trained more than 150,000 people. He was a deep sea diver, rescue worker in the Navy, has worked with all kinds of people from Tony Robbins to elite athletes to all kinds of people. Just got a nice vibe. I've been listening to interviews with him. My friend Rebecca recommended him. So thank you, Rebecca. And Dan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
Got to say, if you see me on my phone, I'm taking notes, okay? So not texting my mum. How did you get interested in the breath, Dan? To start us off with your story.
Well, in kindergarten, in Catholic school, and the pastor of our church came to our class on a Friday and started to read from the first book in the Bible, Genesis, how God took dust of the earth and formed the body of man and breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. I mean, I was just 5 years old, but that was the most exciting thing I had ever heard. Imagine that God is breathing into us. Why isn't everybody excited? And so I don't know, I was just turned on young to the magical, mystical power potential of breathing. And then I had a couple of near drowning experiences, got me really interested in breathing. Nothing makes you appreciate something until it's taken away from you. And then my first real job was as an x-ray technician. And one of the easiest x-rays to take is a chest x-ray. So as a student, I was getting all the chest x-rays. And when you take a chest x-ray, you tell a person, take in a deep breath, hold it, and then click. And I gave those same simple instructions to several thousand people over a couple of years. And I noticed that everybody did something different. The muscles they used, the expression on their face, the effort involved, what they thought or felt was a full breath. And it was like the breath was just speaking to me. I began to see how breathing patterns were related to psychological patterns, emotional tendencies, and so on. And so I just got more and more fascinated with the breath. And then I resuscitated someone. I was 19 years old. I had learned CPR. And within 2 weeks of taking that CPR course, somebody arrested. I was working at the hospital. I pushed a portable x-ray machine up into the intensive care unit. They wanted a chest x-ray. While I was in the room, the guy flatlined. The guy stopped. He died. I mean, he was clinically dead. So my training kicked in. I blew into him. I pumped a little bit. He blinked and he woke up. It was like a miracle. And I couldn't wait. Who's next, Yeah, so it just seems that I was never a conscious choice. It's my passion. It's my obsession. I tried doing other stuff, and everything just kept coming back to the breath. And so I'm a missionary for the breath. That's about it.
Now you've seen this come and go. Breathwork is now super fashionable. It's been popularized. It's a big deal now. People say, it's the new mindfulness, or it's meditation for people that can't meditate. And yoga teachers are getting interested in pranayama again, and not just asana. How have you seen this develop over the years?
Yeah, it's the tool of our day. People who work in high stakes life and death situations, they're trained to breathe. The average person is not. But more and more, everybody is realizing the power and the potential of breathing. If I get a handle on my breath, I'm getting a handle on my consciousness, my awareness. So it's mindfulness training, it's attention training, it's concentration training. And so breathwork develops mindfulness. And also when we're consciously breathing, we're getting a handle on our energy, our life force. And when you bring consciousness and energy together, something is created. So the breath is kind of like the Swiss Army knife of life. You want to calm yourself down, you breathe a certain way. You want to rev yourself up and charge yourself with energy, you breathe another way. You want to balance your system, you breathe another way. You want to control your emotions, control your breath. You want to control your arousal, control your breath. So people are just more and more, it's getting popular. 40 years ago, it was like a voice in the desert crying out, breathing, schmeathing. You know, people thought woo-woo stuff, nah. But now, you know, it's special forces, Navy SEALs, first responders, anybody who works in high-stakes life and death situations are taught to manage their breathing so they manage their emotions, manage their psychological state. And the average person, hey, deserves the same advantage. So I think that's what's happening. It's enough of us have been shouting from the rooftops. And now, because of science and technology, you can start to test in real time and you can see, so this is why that yoga breathing exercise has been practiced for several thousand years. Look at the effect it has on our physiology, on our chemistry. So now with wearables and technology, people are able in real time to see the actual benefits, physiological, chemical benefits of breathing. And so it's the new yoga. It's definitely the new yoga. It's meditation for people who can't meditate. And it's the Swiss Army knife of life. And sooner or later, everybody picks it up and finds something to do with it.
Yeah, the technology is interesting. My wife the other day gave me a thing I put on my finger that tells me my blood oxygen saturation. And it's just a little thing she bought for $20. From the internet. She's checking my health or something, I think. And I was like, wow, this is kind of like high-tech stuff. It's shining a laser through my finger and figuring out my blood oxygenation. And then there's the wearable headbands. You know, I go, okay, my brain waves change when I do this breathing exercise. And I like to test different things out. Is there people you particularly like working with, Dan? Is there sort of particular, I mean, I know you do workshops all over the world, but are there particular groups you enjoy working with?
Well, I mean, my favorite group now are breath workers, people who are actually teaching breathing, practicing breathing, using breathing exercises. Because if you have a breathing practice, I can make very good use of my time. You know, it's easier to, once something's in motion, it's easier to steer it and direct it than it is to get people going. So, I like working with practitioners at this point, psychotherapists, body workers, yoga practitioners who are already doing things with the breath, because like Tony Robbins is a good example, a high performer, peak performer, and he's aware of his breathing. He's aware of other people's breathing. He uses his breath. He practices breathing. And so a little tweak, a little adjustment, he can parlay that into a huge advantage. So I like working with martial artists, psychotherapists, any counselors or coaches, body-oriented psychotherapists, because a little adjustment goes a long way if you've already done work like that on yourself. But I also like turning people on to the breath. I just did a little thing for kids stuck at home. How can you be creative? How can you build up confidence when you're at home? And so playing with different breathing exercises to awaken creative energy. And combining breathing with movement, breathing with sound, breathing with visualization. Kids love it, and it's really powerful practice. So I like preaching to the choir, and I like turning new people onto the breath. But what I really love is working with people who have some kind of a practice, and helping them to tweak it and adjust it. That's my favorite niche at the moment.
No, I'm with you on that. And someone that's been doing this as long as you have, it makes sense that you're training other practitioners as well, in terms of making best use of your time. That makes total sense. I mean, I've seen a lot of breath workers suddenly come out of nowhere that have maybe done 2 or 3 weekends as a training. And I've met them and I've gone, okay, there's really often a very sincere enthusiasm, and sometimes they're a little bit evangelical. But I go, okay, at least they're putting something positive out there. But maybe I'm thinking there must be some mistakes there, because I've been doing yoga for 20 years and I feel like I'm only just getting a handle on some of the basic breath techniques. So, I mean, what do you see as some of the common mistakes of breath workers that are being perpetuated these days?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot of people are learning breathing exercises and breathing techniques, and there are so many schools of breath, so many styles, so many methods, so many approaches. And some people, it's kind of like a cookie stamp thing. They have their one thing, and then they do it. I feel more like an artist, and I think people, when it comes to breathwork is an art. It's a science and it's an art. And if you're an artist, you don't want one color on your palette. You want lots of colors. And so there are lots of breathing schools. 40 years ago, I could count on one hand, how many great breathing teachers there were in the world. Now there are thousands of them. It's normal. It's natural. If I learn something that helps me, I want to share it. I want to teach it to other people. And so, maybe there are some teachers out there who really haven't been trained that well. Maybe they don't know that much, but they're inspired. They're motivated. They want to do good. And there's a huge margin of safety in the universe. You can make big mistakes and still be safe. And I've never met a breathing technique I didn't like. And, but training good breath workers, I think, is a really important calling. And if you're going to do something, you want a good foundation. You want a broad foundation. You want to practice a lot yourself so that you're not talking somebody else's stuff. You've embodied it. You've mastered something, and it's natural to want to share it. So what I look for are the fundamentals. Every good breathing school, ancient, modern, every method, every style, and there are certain universal principles. And if we teach those principles, and then people can combine them creatively for themselves. And it's kind of, there's a factor in breath work that's kind of hard to pin down. I call it the consciousness factor, because two people can practice the same exact breathing technique. For example, breathe in for 6 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 12, So two people could practice the exact same breathing technique and get opposite results. One person, it calms them down, it relaxes them. Other people, it makes them uncomfortable. They get anxiety, they get short of breath. So two people can practice the same technique and get opposite effects. And two people can practice seemingly opposite breathing techniques and get the same benefit. So I think that's about consciousness. It's about what we put into the breathing. It's not so much what we get out of it. Eckhart Tolle, I think, said, if you watch a child play, they don't get joy out of what they do. They put joy into what they do. And that's why they're sparkling. That's why they're shining. That's why you can give them a piece of stick and some dirt and they're in ecstasy. It's got nothing to do with the stick or the dirt. It's what do you put into it? So I look for those fundamentals. What do we put into the breathing? And I try to point them out whenever they appear in some form. And I'll give you those 3 principles because that's what I look for. Yeah.
Okay.
One of them, and maybe it's the answer to, hey, what's the best way to breathe? What's the best breathing technique? If I could only practice one exercise, what should it be? My answer to that is practice something that makes you more conscious. Whatever breathing exercise you do, you're becoming more aware of your breathing. You're developing meditative awareness. It's a mindfulness practice. So any breathing exercise that makes you more conscious of your breathing, that's a great breathing exercise. It makes you more conscious of your posture. It makes you more conscious of your emotional reactions, of your muscles in your body, of the details, the sensations of the breath. Practice breath awareness, being the witness, being the watcher. You don't even have to breathe in any special way. Just develop an intimate relationship with your breath. And you'll notice that every breathing style or school or a teacher, this is a given. You have to pay attention to your breathing. Notice your breathing. Observe your breathing at different times in different situations, when you're stuck in traffic, when someone is praising you, when someone is insulting you, when you're having an orgasm, when you're on the toilet, when you're cooking, when you're trying to solve a math problem. Most people don't turn to their breathing during those moments, but when you do, you discover something about yourself. You make connections. So that's the first thing that I look for, the principle. Are people becoming more conscious, more aware of the details, of the subtleties, of the muscles they use? That's a practice in breath work. The second thing, if I was only going to practice one technique, I would practice a sigh of relief. A sigh of relief is where you take an inhale that's twice as big as normal. You create that extra stretch, that extra expansion, and then you release it. So that's not even a technique. It's not an exercise. What we're doing is we're venting tension. We're releasing tension. So a sigh of relief, it's not really a technique. It's not an exercise. It's a natural breathing response. But when you do it consciously, it becomes a powerful technique. And it's a powerful technique for relaxation, letting go. If I could only practice one breathing exercise, it would be one that allows me to relax more. And because when I'm relaxed, good ideas come to my mind. When I'm relaxed, I'm peaceful, I'm calm. And so, and anxiety and tension and stress, those are the big killers in the world. And so if I can breathe in a way that I can relax on demand, wow, what a great skill to have. And the third would be for energy. When I don't think I can take another step, when I'm dull, when I'm depressed, when I have no energy, can I learn to breathe, to charge myself up, to enliven myself, to awaken myself? So if you could find one breathing technique that did all those three things, made you more conscious, made you more relaxed, and gave you more energy, that would be it. And you know what? A person can invent that for themselves. If you're conscious, if you're paying attention, you can do that. And a sigh of relief is a good example that you can bring it all together. I take a long inhale. I focus on the sensations in my nose, the subtleties. I focus on the expansion in my belly and my chest. And then I let go and relax. And all I've done was a conscious sigh of relief, but it's a very powerful meditation and exercise in awareness and meditative awareness. It's relaxing and it's energizing. So that's a good place to start.
I talked about the principles there because I've been finding it quite confusing as I've got more into breath work. It's, someone saying, hey, you should do this kind of quick bellows breath. Someone else saying, hey, you should box breath and 4 in, hold, 4 out. And someone else said, no, never hold the breath. That's really bad for you. Other people say, hold it on the out breath, hold it on the in breath. Do a 5-6 ratio, do a 8-12 ratio. And it's like, I just try different things. I see what works for me. And I sometimes try and test them with metrics or, my brainwave headband bands or whatever. But it seems to be on different days. It has different results. I mean, is there any more underlying kind of theory or principle at work here?
Yeah, it's like going on a first date, right? I'm on a first date with somebody. I don't start making them do tricks for me. I don't start controlling them and manipulating them. And yet many people, when they begin breath work, you're beginning a relationship with your breath, and right away you're into controlling it, manipulating it, and many times you can do artificial stuff. So it starts with getting to know. I'm on a first date with you. I want to get to know you. What do you like? How do you feel? How do you move? What's exciting? So we get to know the person. We get to know our own breathing by practicing breath awareness. That's a really important principle to start with, right? And so I just took a breath. It's kind of like an interruption. It's like an intervention. I can use it to open and expand and then relax and let go. And I can drop into my center. I can refocus. So now I'm using the breath to tap back into the present moment, come back into focus, charge myself with energy, and release a little stress. So we play with the breath. Play is nature's way of learning. You mentioned all those things, right? Practice breath holding. No, don't practice breath holding. Make the inhales longer than the exhales. Breathe through your chest, breathe through your nose, breathe in your belly. All of those things make sense, and they're all good to practice. And so you just start somewhere. And again, I guess I'm going to be like a broken record, but it all begins with consciousness. It all begins with awareness, putting quality awareness into each breath, meditative awareness into each breath. That's the basic start. And then after that, look at the parameters. I can choose the channel. I can breathe in the nose, out the mouth. I can breathe in one nostril, out the other. I can breathe in and out the nose, in and out the mouth. So I can start to experiment. You can play with breath sounds. combining breathing with different sounds. Right? Playing with breath sounds, combining breathing and movement. Movement and breath, sound and breath, visualization and breath. And so we play with the parameters and you get creative. You can start with an existing breathing technique just to get you in the game. But the sooner you start to get creative, you combine techniques. I have this advice for people. You find a breathing exercise you really like. It makes you feel good. It gives you benefit. Maybe it's just enjoyable. That's enough. It's enjoyable. Do it. And then what's the opposite of that? And invent the opposite technique and play with that. And be your own scientist. Be your own researcher. I can say I'm standing on the shoulders of all of my teachers, and other people are standing on my shoulders. And so we're on a ladder. And as I learn more, I'm pushing other people up. As they learn more, they're pulling me up. And so, breathwork is still in the early, not infancy maybe, but certainly puberty. This is in the West, breathwork is a new model. We're just beginning. So, we need to be experimenting, exploring, and practicing and just seeing what works for us. Hey, if it works for me and it doesn't work for anybody else, hey, who cares? But if it works for me, it's probably going to work for some other people. So I understand the passion that people learn something and they want to share it, but I also have to honor good teaching and good coaching, and no substitute for daily practice and walking your talk,
Quick break from the interview to tell you about our shop and a deal we've got on there, and also about some events that are coming up. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator /shop and use the code podcast 50 is the code, you can get 50% off anything in the shop. And what have we got on there? How to design training, trauma for facilitators, breathwork, leadership, resilience, life purpose. There's a bunch of books, there's a bunch of e-courses, mostly for facilitators, trainers, coaches, yogis, different ebooks, but that code will give you 50% off anything at all there in the shop. So that could save you, let's say, up to £100, which is about $120. So well worth having that code. Go to embodiedfacilitator.com/shop. Also on that website, you will see embodiedfacilitator.com/events-calendar. Just look under events under the main title. You'll see all the stuff we've got coming up for events. We regularly have free online events. If you're interested in embodiment, we have them on coaching, life purpose, marketing, all trauma, all sorts of things. So have a look at the events page. You can see the different one-day events we've got coming up related to the conference and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, so all of that is on embodiedfacilitator.com. And remember that code there. That code is podcast50 if you want 50% off anything. There you go. A good deal. Back to the interview. Who do you rate in this world, Dan? Is there any other teachers that you kind of think, oh, this person's really worth listening to?
Well, ancient Eastern traditions, Taoist practices, traditional pranayama, Qi Kung, Chinese medical breathing exercises. It's no accident that these ancient methods have survived across millennia. It's because they work. So you can turn to very traditional, established, ancient practices and just put a little modern twist on them, So I like Swami Rama, I like all of the ancient Taoist practices, the Sufi techniques, a lot of great Sufi techniques, and a lot of the body-oriented psychotherapists. They tune into the breath. They see that link between the breathing and the body. And when the breath is released, the body releases. And when you release the body, the breath flows. And so that link between the body and the breath, I like teachers who link body work and breath work, who link psychotherapy and breath work, who link movement and breath work. That's a lot of juicy stuff there.
there's a lot of variables, aren't there, to explore, as you say, like where and you breathe and how long. And I've played with a lot of these and just do my own kind of experimentation on it. And as you say, there is that temptation to think what's worked for me is going to work for others. And I've definitely seen people that have one technique and they give that to everyone. I kind of think, is that really the way? There was one very good teacher I know who said, you should have breath work like water, like whiskey, and like coffee. And said, look, there's something to wake you up, something to chill you out in the evening, and something is your just general health practice. And for example, just doing the coffee probably isn't great for you long term, or just doing the whiskey.
Some people need to get off coffee for a while, right?
Right.
Practice something else. Yeah. Tibetan caffeine. I have a friend, Mike White at breathing.com. He has a breathing exercise he calls Tibetan caffeine. You can use breath instead of caffeine to keep yourself awake. I had to do it in the military. I had to do it working in hospitals on call in the middle of the night. We don't need as many substances as we might think. And with practice, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish with the breath.
I mean, what's your sort of range of techniques? And I'm sure it's pretty huge, but have you sort of settled on, let's say you have a 1 day or a 2 day workshop, are there some sort of real classics? You go, you know what, I've got these coaches here for a couple of days. I want them all to walk away with these 5, or what have you settled on? I'm not going to ask you the best way to breathe, because I think that's a stupid way of putting it, but I'm sure you found some favorites.
Yeah. Sighing and yawning are things that I teach just about at every seminar, because they're not really breathing techniques. They're natural responses. When I'm in pain and the pain goes away, what happens to my breath? Sigh of relief. If I'm in fear, anxious, and the panic, and the fear or the panic passes, a sigh of relief happens. So we discovered early on that, hey, if every time you're in pain and you go to a state of no pain, or you're in fear and you go to a state of no fear, the sigh of relief expresses itself. You don't do it on purpose. You don't make it happen. It comes by itself. It's a natural response to our change in state. Well, what about if it's a two-way street? I change my breathing and my state changes. So I encourage people to just play with a sigh of relief and exaggerate it and make it theatrical and make it Shakespearean and use visualization and affirmation together with the sigh, right?
Listeners can try that one at home. That's a nice one, huh?
Yeah, it's very simple.
Sit down in the chair, or it's the most supernatural.
Yeah. And then yawning. Neuroscientists say they can't find any single activity that lights up more important parts of the brain than yawning. And animals yawn before they fight, and they yawn after the attack. Light stimulates yawning. We yawn when we're tired, but we also yawn when we're full of energy. And so yawning is something, it's another natural reflex. And I encourage people to yawn on purpose and play with it. And yawning is yoga. Stretch, make sounds. And if you do that, meditate before you yawn, and then play with yawning for a minute or so, and then meditate, and you'll see you've changed your energy. You're in a different state. So stuff doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be difficult. We can start with very natural things and then build from there. And here's a good one: infusing every cell. I really try to get people to do this wherever I go. Take breathing beyond the lungs. Breathing is a whole body experience, and it's multidimensional, it's multi-layered. And so when you breathe in, imagine sending breath to every cell of your body. And imagine breathing in your favorite color light, or breathing in your favorite fragrance, or breathing in a powerful statement, a declaration. So, wow, you can get really creative with the breath in very simple ways. I call it infusing every cell. What kind of energy do I want to fill myself with? What kind of energy do I want to put out into the world? And so I might focus on my heart. and awaken heart feelings, love, compassion, peace, joy, appreciation, gratitude. So now when I take a breath, I'm not just taking a breath, I'm doing an exercise in gratitude. I'm doing an exercise in appreciation. And so we take breathing to another level. And that's what I'm always trying to do. Where can we go with the breath? What can we do with it? What's the next level in my own personal growth? Do I want to see God? Do I just want to get rid of headaches? Do I have asthma? And so we start with little things and we play and we practice. Like you said, you practice this, you try that, and you start to fall into your own kind of rhythm and pace, and trust your nature, trust your intuition. So I'm a missionary for learning to breathe from the breath itself. If I observe my breathing when I'm stuck in traffic, I'm going to learn something about myself, right? Breathing to awaken body intelligence, getting the breath down into the Dan Xian, into the hara, into your lower belly. Get the breath down into the floor of the pelvis, right? Breathe, awaken that lower breathing space from the perineum to the belly button. I get everybody to get the breath down there and get good at sending the breath there. And then you awaken heart intelligence. Practice breathing, expanding side to side, front to back, top to bottom. Loosen your rib cage while you're breathing. Stretch and move and feel like you're opening up spaces around your heart. You're awakening heart intelligence. And then send the breath up into your head to cool your brain, calm your mind, and maybe connect with higher intelligence. So those are some of the things that we try to play with just about everywhere. And depending on the population, as you said, not everything is good for everybody. A frail, elderly woman in bed isn't going to practice the same things a peak athlete is going to practice, but they can both get into the game and they can both begin to practice things that fit who they are, their degree of skill, their level of health, and their purpose in training. What do you want to accomplish with your breath? That will guide you into a certain book or a teacher or certain techniques.
And I love it, particularly the breath-centric approach and, more sophisticated approach and just saying this one technique for everyone. I think we should talk about some of the risks a little bit here. And, often we have people on the show and they'll be very evangelical about their thing. And, particularly if they're American, they'll be almost trying to sell their thing. And it's like, let's be honest, that there are downsides. Like I've seen people go a bit nuts on breathwork seminars. Really, I saw one guy lose his memory for a couple of days. He couldn't remember the last 2 days. I've seen people get really hyper. I did a lot of very yang breath work for a while and I was just super horny and couldn't listen to anyone. I'm not a great listener anyway, honestly, Dan. And I was just like my ADHD was going into overdrive, And then I was like, well, maybe I should do some more yin breath too and not just this yang stuff. And I've definitely seen a few people lose the plot or get kind of aggressive, a few guys, I've seen, full of oxygen, so yeah, maybe we should just be honest with people and say, look, this is a great thing. And there's lots of good stuff, but also there are some risks here, right?
Well, when we breathe, we are definitely affecting our chemistry, our pH balance. Carbon dioxide is an acid. So when you're breathing and you're doing different things with your breath, you're affecting the acid-base balance. And for some people, you can push that in the wrong direction. The pH is so important. And so, yeah, you want to be natural, be conscious, be gentle. And there's a whole range. There's the rah, 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 and then there's the more sublime. And I think people see where they are in that spectrum and they can naturally position themselves and, what do you want to accomplish? Where are you going to go with it? But there is a lot of hype. Let's super oxygenate ourselves, and let's hyperventilate. So, yeah, we have to honor science and factual chemistry because we're working with that breath. But we also can be creative. And every emotional state corresponds to a certain breathing pattern. Every psychological state is associated with a certain breathing pattern. Every physiological state, every spiritual state has an associated corresponding breathing pattern. And so we can start to play in that direction. What do I want? Do I want to be calm? Invent a calm breath. Do I want to be peaceful? You could invent a peaceful breath right here, right now, without any lessons. Anybody. Imagine what a peaceful breath would look like and sound like. Imagine how a very peaceful person would breathe, and you're going to begin to breathe in a peaceful way. So there is a lot of hype out there, and that's people are passionate. They're enthusiastic. I'm like that. I'm a missionary for the breath. But we need to keep coming back to solid science, but also stay open to the creative possibilities. So, we fit our pattern to suit our particular intention, level of health, degree of skill, and so on.
Yeah, and I guess there's counterindications as well, as you say, aren't there? Sort of medical conditions, or mental health conditions perhaps as well, and it's like someone who's depressed needs to be doing very different breath work than someone who's suffering from anxiety, right? Like you were saying, the uppers and the downers, it's not the same medicine they need for sure.
If you have asthma, you're going to be breathing in a different way than somebody who doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, I had COVID not long ago, so I had to adjust my breath work to that. And all of a sudden, my breath holds were almost impossible. And after about 2 days of almost killing myself, I was like, I need to adjust what I'm doing here, and make it a little bit more healing and a bit less intense. So, changed it around. I heard you work with the Systema guys for my friend Rebecca. So I'm interested in martial arts and Systema particularly. Yeah, what did you do with those guys?
Well, I started going to Russia in 1990, and I trained these Spetsnaz guys. We trained the president's bodyguards. We trained psychotherapists. So I've been in Russia for a long time, and I met Systema guys way back when, and I followed Ryabko and Vasilyev, who's in Toronto. Ryabko's over in Moscow. And I love their approach because it's breath-centered. It's a martial arts system that is breath-centered and relaxation-centered. And to me, that makes all the sense in the world. So I love the approach, the Systema approach of breathing and relaxation. And I love those guys. And I suggest that, if you're in that field, fitness, martial art field, that you pick up some of their principles because they really work. They're really powerful. Yeah, I love that stuff. And, when you work with a seasoned martial artist who's got a lot of chi, my first guy I worked with is Leonard Mills Jr., and this was back in 1980. And he was in Seekonk, Massachusetts. I was doing breath work at a little holistic center next door to his martial arts studio. And at the time, the guy had the record for breaking the most concrete with his head. I think 17 inches of bricks he broke with his head. His name was Leonard Mills Jr. And so I went into next door to his place one time. And as I got to know him, he had diabetes. He had high blood pressure. And so I'm having these conversations with him like, wow, you can break bricks, but you got these other ailments. How do you make sense of that, And first of all, how do you break 17 inches of bricks with your head? He said, well, you just got to generate enough internal force to match the external resistance. Okay, well, how do you do that, So, but what I learned from him, and then I learned from my aikido master, who I started to study with and play with, was that these guys had a lot of chi. They could break bricks. They could throw me to the ground, And so I realized, wow, the same energy. If I can break a brick, I can mend a bone. If I can throw you to the ground, I can build up your immune system. It's the same energy used a different way. And I realized that these guys who had a lot of chi, a lot of skill, you make a little adjustment in their breathing, and wow, they can do a lot with that. So I like the martial art world because if you've been in it long enough and you're a real guy, a real woman, the ego has already been shattered. You can be clear in the present moment. And I like working with people who are still students, even though they're masters, they're still students. So
yeah, there's a nice humility often to the martial arts world. Who was your aikido teacher, just out of interest? Because that's a world I know reasonably well.
Yeah, I was in New Bedford, Massachusetts. His name was Jack Leonardo.
Okay.
He was into archery. I was just a teenager. He was into archery. He hosted all the big guys from Japan. I forget the head guy in aikido at the time, the guy who started. And he had this group that were traveling through. And so he invited me. And I got experience with these guys like, whoa, it just turned me on to aikido like nothing else.
Right.
And yeah, his name was Jack Leonardo.
Great, back in the day. Okay, well, sort of moving towards the wrap up here. I mean, is there anything you haven't talked about that you think you'd really love to get out there? I know from listening to other interviews, there's so much more you could offer, and on your website, there's so much on breathmastery.com. But is there any other sort of aspects you think we should touch in on?
Well, in these days, thinking about our immune system makes a lot of sense. If you don't want to catch something, if you're dealing with something, or if you're recovering from something, breathing is just a perfect thing to do to strengthen your immune system, ward off the virus. And if you're exposed to something, your immune system is so powerful it can kill it quick. So breathing exercises connected to strengthening the immune system, I think, is a good place to go. And breathing exercises that awaken our creativity, because we need new solutions. We have new problems in the world. We need new solutions. So you want to feel something you've never felt before? Breathe in a way you've never breathed before. You want to experience yourself in a different way? Experience yourself through an awareness of your breathing, right? Start to get the breath low into the belly and slow, so you come into a clear, relaxed, centered state, and then have the intention to energize yourself and begin to use the breath to charge your immune system and to relax more and to energize yourself and awaken your creative energies and your healing energies. And you can do that with any breathing exercise. As I said in the beginning, it's what you put into it depends on what you get out of it. Find a breathing exercise you like, combine it with visualization, with intention, and you're in the game.
Excellent. I know on your shop here, there's all kinds of stuff people can get. You've got a book out called Just Breathe as well. That's pretty well known, isn't it? So I'm just looking at that.
Yeah, now. 10 languages. And Tony Robbins did the forward. Yep.
Okay, I'll be getting that for an audio book myself. There's a bit of listening for me while I'm doing my long walks, which I'm doing to keep fit right now. And all sorts of online courses as well, by the looks of things.
Yes, yeah, both. Thank you.
Okay.
And breathmastery.com, we have a whole archives. I've written an article, a report about breathing every month since June of 1976. So my website, Breath Mastery, has archives of articles and transcripts and seminar. And so you can surf around breathmastery.com and you'll find lots of stuff that'll help you.
Great.
Motivate you, inspire you.
No, I like how you speak about it, and you're passionate, and you've got a huge amount of experience, and I just like your approach to it. So thank you for coming on. Any final message about the body, Dan, to see us off?
Hey, every breath can be a prayer. And every breath is a blessing. You just make it so. If you have a weak part in you, you have a sore place or a weak spot, breathe into it, send energy, send life to it. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish with an intention and just a little practice.
Dan, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If you're, most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy, and of course there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you.